I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of this board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. A final decision is then made. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. Our first item of business on the agenda tonight is Gary and Patricia Glad, Coho Properties LLC, 25996 Emerald Road, Randall. Application for a variance to construct a home within the setback to the lake, located on Round Lake in Cushing Township. And you're ready with the report?
Would you like to ask the applicant to come
Oh,
forward?
I always do that, don't I? Would the applicants like to come forward?
Yeah, would.
And pull the mic up real close and state your name for the record.
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, please.
You missed that too. You've never done this before.
I'll try to confuse you for another hour at least here.
Oh, my. Hi, friends.
Hi,
Okay, your names, please.
I'm Aubrey Hogarth Cook.
Cody Cook.
Curtis Stone.
Thank you.
Cody and I own Coho Properties. We've asked Curtis to help with the drawings for our new space.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So, now the staff report.
Sure, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a variance to construct a dwelling within setback to the lake. The ordinance reference for this is section 706.1. And then here is a plat map of the township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here is the variance request received from the applicant. And a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And a survey. And then some drawings of the proposed home.
Good job, Curtis.
And here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then some oblique imagery. And then also some imagery from the lakeside. And then here's some site photos taken at the viewing. Again, the property is in section 27 of Cushing Township, and it is on Round Lake, which is a general development lake. The property is a conforming single lot, which means it is at least 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 143 feet wide and 80,061 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the 509 square foot, 10-foot tall dwelling was built in 1920, and the dwelling is 30 feet from the lake. There is wetland on the property, which has been delineated by the Soil and Water Conservation District and is shown on the survey. The survey indicates a 12,488 square foot building envelope that's available on the property. And then here's the survey again with the building envelope areas highlighted. The applicant has owned the property since 2020. The applicant is requesting a variance to construct a new 960 square foot cabin directly to the west of the existing cabin location, maintaining that 30-foot setback from the lake. The proposed height of the cabin is 22 feet, and the existing cabin would be removed. According to the survey, the proposed impervious surface is 18.6%, and 25% impervious surface is allowed. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1. And then the applicable Morrison County Comprehensive Water Plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B, land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 45 notices were sent, 3 letters and 1 telephone call, all in support of the request was received prior to the public hearing. We received a phone call from David Nygaard. He is a neighbor, and he called to say that he has no problem with rebuilding even though they won't meet the setback. A letter from Jack and Sue Bisbee. We welcome a new structure to improve the Round Lake community. Cody is a fantastic part of the lake community, and we fully support his variance in order for him to build his lake cabin. Doug Newcomb, we are okay with Cody building a new structure to improve and build his new cabin. And this one is, I'm unsure of the signature, but it says, we, Dean and Terry Seaton, have no objections of building a home on said property. Coho Properties will be improving the property by cleaning up said property and building a new home, which will improve the image of Round Lake. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Applicants have anything to add to the staff report at this time?
There's a few things I'd like to add in there. We filled out the report to put the cabin where it is. Moving it over was to save some of the mature pine trees that are on the lake, on the structure there, to keep it from eroding more. We've actually went through the steps to get a septic permit already in order to move that septic tank that you saw right there in front of that garage over and back to where the driveway is, so it would allow more room. So we could move it over to the west and back 10 or 15 foot to make it better for everything and to save them trees and everything to keep that shoreline intact.
So are you proposing something other than what you've applied for?
Well, I'm proposing we can move it back a little bit. When we put that in, we didn't think through everything probably as good as we should have, and
This is a good picture of those.
we wanted to move it over, which the 2 trees that were dead where the stumps are in the picture, we'd cut them down because they were gonna fall down. So if we move over, then we're not encroaching on the root system and everything of them existing mature trees there. So I think that's something that we should add. And the septic, again, we had went through the steps to get that approved to move it back to allow more room.
Moving it back, you're saying build farther from the lake?
Yes.
We could, from what me and Curtis looked at a minute ago, I think I could get right around that 45-foot mark. We'd have to do a little surveying and work to double check that and submit it to you, but I don't see any reason we can't get 45 foot.
So, Mr. Chair, are you asking to revise your request to consider building a dwelling 45 feet from the lake rather than the 30?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
to add a little bit more room.
And are you proposing to move it farther west also, you said?
No,
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 okay.
the west is fine, just back.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else you'd like to add?
What should we add?
We'll have questions for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, board, I guess we're ready for questions for staff or for them or for any experts you see out there.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
Amy, could you pull up where it shows the building envelope? Okay, with that building envelope that's in yellow,
Yes.
is that with the setbacks?
Mr. Chair, that meets all setbacks. So the building envelope that you see there highlighted is 75 feet from the lake, at least 10 feet from the side property line, and then the 25 feet from the delineated wetland.
Okay. So my question for you guys would be then, what would be your reasoning for not wanting to put it directly west of the garage?
There's 3 major trees on that side, which we'd have to go back and check. The other thing is, the neighbor has his building that's been there over 40 years that is over that property line. So I think we'd be encroaching each other's space there.
But the way I come up with, there's from the west side of your garage to your west property line is roughly 60 feet.
Oh, if If we done that.
Not
there-
property line, but buildable space.
If we moved over to there, that's where we had proposed to move that septic tank over and back. If we move it to there, we'd have to work on where to put that. Because we can't, the well is on the other side of the garage
Yep.
in that photo, so there's no way to put the well over on that side.
Yeah.
Or the septic on that side, sorry.
Okay. That's probably all I have for now,
Okay,
but it would fit in there.
thank you, Clint. You bought the property in 2020.
Yes, sir.
Was that garage there at the time, or did you build the garage?
There was a garage there and we rebuilt the
Okay.
garage.
So the garage that is there now you built?
Yes,
Okay. Probably on the prime spot for the cabin.
yes.
Yeah. So according to your request and according to your answers to the criteria questions, you kind of have created your own practical difficulty,
On that, yes, we have.
which means, okay, we'll get to that later. Okay, any others?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
and I was thinking in the same neighborhood as Clint, and, being on this board for a number of years, we try to not create non-conforming structures, and when you see a buildable area, a large buildable area, I haven't heard enough from you to convince me to change my vote to a yay versus a nay when you have an opportunity here. And there are, 3 trees, pine trees, it's not mature oaks or whatever like that. And I understand where you're coming from in that. And then when you have your neighboring property, well, we walk through there and we shouldn't have walked through there and more lights and buzzers flashing than we could imagine. It
yeah,
was
you-
not a, so a privacy
He said
fence
it, we
would probably be
didn't.
good. But them are facts, whatever. So anyhow, is there anything you can add to convince me otherwise, when you have the opportunity to have a nice conforming structure and a conforming lot, and we don't have many conforming lots in a lot of areas, and you would have this opportunity?
Well, if I understood the rules, I could rebuild the existing cabin in the exact same footprint that it's in now.
You're
And
correct.
if I was to do that, I would kill 4 or 5 mature trees and take the opportunity of the shoreline. I'm trying to ask that we somehow meet in the middle or get something that works for everybody. Haven't ever done one of these, so I don't. To move over to the neighbor's property, we could survey it and lay it out and see if it'd work. I think I'd have trouble fitting the septic and everything in there. I'm more than willing to look at it.
Okay.
It's something I haven't looked at. That main road went through there, and we've always used it road, so never really went that way. That's not probably the best answer I could give you, but
Okay.
I'm willing to look at options.
Can you pull the triangle of yellow back? Where's Bob's cabin? And how far away from his cabin are we supposed to be?
Amy, could you address that?
Mr. Chair, it looks like what's shown on the closest structure of the neighbors that's shown over is a movable playhouse. And that's an encroachment on the property line, so it's not his cabin, it's a playhouse with a
Okay.
wood deck. We don't have, you need to be 10 feet from your own property line.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that would be, that building envelope shown in there is 10 feet from your property line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Are you ready for public input? Okay, we'll open it up for public input at this time. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to comment on this, for or against? I'll ask 3 times, then I'll close it to public input. Oh, you'd have to be recognized and go over to the microphone. and state your name for the record. Please.
Dan Amundson, and I'm on Chaminade Lake, but I'm for whatever can improve lake property owners' looks. If it makes it look nicer, I'm all for it. So
Okay,
that's all I got to say.
thank you. Okay, is there anybody else? Any other input? Any other input? If there's no other public input, we'll close it to the public. Okay, then we're on with our part of answering the questions. Are you ready to discuss the questions? They're a pretty verbal group. Deep in thought. I'll proceed with asking the questions then. And we'll start out the first question with Marv answering. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv, if you care to start.
Mr. Chair, anyhow, even though we have 4 letters of support and other individuals' support, which is great, we'd like to see that, I still believe that here we're creating a nonconformity by doing this when we have the opportunity to have everything in conforming, which is not in the ordinance. And also, you know, you're asking for something which is in the shore impact zone. You get beyond that 50 feet, then we're more palatable, being able to say, well, that's a possibility. 75 foot is what we're hoping, but when you're this close, 30 feet, that is not in harmony with our comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Brent?
Yeah, I think there's a potential here with the building envelope that exists on the property that a conforming structure could be built within that area. A little hindsight, when the garage was redone, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but that certainly is an area for consideration, and having a conforming structure on a lot is probably best in the long run for you as the owner of the property as well. You don't want to build something that's, you know, non-conforming, because then you got to come back for a variance anytime you do anything with that in the future, because it's still in that area. So I don't know if you've thought about that at all. Something to consider.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead, Dave.
No, I think that Marv and Brent's points are well taken. I believe there's an envelope that can be worked with there. And, you know, I don't, not a consideration here, but, you know, I don't know what your budget is or what your intent is, but that garage is, sometimes progress is jackhammering concrete. So, you know, I think if you really wanted to make something out of it, there's still an opportunity to put it in there without doing anything with the garage. But you've got an envelope you can work with there. And as far as I could tell, to the west of that garage, I don't recall, you know, any real difficulties other than that, or that you just have to move your driveway, I think. But, so that's my 2 cents worth here. Thank you.
Well, one thing back to that, the 30, when we first started, we'd come up with, we could get to 45 foot with that setback. I just wanted to make sure we were.
Yeah, so thanks for clarifying that. Okay, I'd just like to add that, you know, I agree. We're kind of commissioned here to reduce nonconformities, bring things closer to conformity at least, and not create new nonconformities, especially when you're starting from scratch, you know, which you are proposing to do. As you had said, you have every right to replace exactly what you've got, but you can't expand it in any way. Yeah, respect for the shore impact zone and setbacks is what the ordinance is about. The ordinance was created with those setbacks and that shore impact zone to respect property and the public's use of property, and groundwater and surface water. You've got a sizable building envelope. Again, poor placement of the new shed was, again, like it was mentioned, hindsight is 20/20, but yeah. Always good when you're doing something along the lake shore to check with land services to see, what constraints does my property have? Okay, number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent, we'll start with you.
Well, I think he's proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner by, building a cabin where a cabin exists. And it certainly isn't permitted by the land use ordinance. So in that regard, it's reasonable. The lot can support a cabin or a home. It's just a matter of where is that going to be? So setting it back further or actually putting it in the envelope and making a conforming structure for yourself and for the future of the property, or is a variance reasonable? May or may not be.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? Yeah, I agree with that. It's not reasonable, in my opinion, to add impervious surface to the shore impact zone. So even at the 45-foot setback, you'd be in the shore impact zone, and I'm not sure where your proposed driveway would be with that plan, but that was also in the original plan in the shore impact zone.
The driveway would stay exactly where it is.
Okay. Right, number 3, will the issuance of the variance, is there anybody else that'd like to add to number 2? Okay. Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I get to start out there. The essential character of the locality is basically kind of your cabin, the way it is, 10 feet tall and, at 30 feet. Your proposal originally was 30 feet. Even at 45 feet, a 22-foot cabin is a pretty imposing structure that close to the shoreline, and it would definitely change the character of the locality from quaint and kind of rustic to brand new and imposing. So, in my opinion, it would not maintain the essential character of the locality. Would anybody like to add to that?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Marv.
well, in some ways, with the neighborhood, it would look nicer. I just wanted to add that, but I mean, but anyhow.
He said it,
Dave was
we didn't.
Is correct as you would notice it from the lakeside. And the further back you get, the better it would look in there. And from the front side, it's deep enough, you wouldn't notice it. So, so if it would be put in a building envelope, I think you have an opportunity to have a really nice lot in the future.
Okay, anybody else on number 3?
Yeah, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair.
David.
Yeah, no, I think there's a real opportunity to do something with that lot. Looking out there, I really do think there's a real opportunity, like Marv said, and building within that building envelope. I don't know, again, what your intentions are, but I think you could make it look beautiful. It's a nice lot. You've got a lot of room there, and, by changing some things around, but I think there's opportunity to do that within the building envelope.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, are we ready for number 4? Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? We're starting with you, Clint.
Well, as everybody knows on this board, I'm probably the most tolerant when it comes to practical difficulties and reasonable use. And I can't find a practical difficulty here. And I'm probably the softest on this. Appreciate what you're trying to do in saving trees and things like that. and you wanna go bigger, I would too, so you wanna move it back, that's great. But I really do think that it could fit in that building envelope. And, if you did in there, that would be just permittable as long as it meets the setbacks. You might even be able to go just a tick bigger
I
if you
think-
wanted,
I think if I move back to there, I'm gonna be back to a holding tank system and not be able to get a mound system and that in there. We permitted a full system when we done it. And that's a technical difficulty that I'll have to deal with, but that
Well,
was,
I think you could put that in, I don't, back and forth banter, but to the south, east of that garage, I think it would fit in there. I mean, you look on there's still plenty, but whatever, to me, I can't find a practical difficulty for what you proposed, for the 30 by 32, you got 60 feet without an actual measurement. I come up with about 60 feet from your garage to your property line setback. So you actually 70 feet to the property line. So I think it'd fit in there and it wouldn't have to be on top of that garage. I don't know where the trees sit. I don't remember that when I was there to look at that, but anyways, I can't find a practical difficulty unless somebody else can. So that's just all I would say to that.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Anybody like to add to that? Okay. Yeah, I agree. No unique circumstances on this property that created a practical difficulty. And I also agree with Dave's observation, really 75 feet back, that means you've got 75 feet of beautiful lakeshore, nice green space, you'll find a lot of use for that. Number 5, how is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave, you begin.
I don't believe it is. I think, by the time I get to question 5, we've kind of rounded up a lot of things before this point. So I do, like I said, I think there's an opportunity to really do something beautiful with that lot within the building envelope. And it covers all the things that Clint covered and Marv and everybody else has covered. So I don't think the variance is created by actions other than the landowner.
Okay, anybody like to add to that? Okay, question number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
I believe it is. I mean, I appreciate them wanting to save the trees. And then also talking about moving closer to the neighbors, not infringing and creating an issue there. They're thinking about some other items there too. So it's much more than economics.
Anybody care to add to that?
Just that I'd agree, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, Amy, you have enough reasons for us to proceed? Okay, we'll proceed to vote on these questions then. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
And Dave?
No.
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
And Marv?
No.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? My answer is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
No.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
No.
Dave?
No.
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
And myself is no. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave?
No.
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
and Dave.
Yes.
Okay, according to my tally, questions number 3 and 5 have, or 6 have been answered. Yes?
1, 2, 4, and 5 were answered in
Mr. Chair,
Yep. 1, 2, 4, and 5 were no.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny this request.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Any discussion on the motion to deny the request? I'll do a roll vote. If you're in favor, say aye. If you're not, say no. Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
And Dave?
Aye.
Your request for a variance is denied. See what you need to do with plan services, and they'll guide you well, I think.
Sorry, but thank you. Thank you for
Good luck to
coming
you.
forward.
Good
here.
job, big boss.
Yeah,
Thanks.
We have to.
Hope we taught you something.
Stick around and find out.
Okay, next on the agenda is Daniel Amundson, 1794 West Shamana Drive, Motley. Applicant for a variance to expand a non-conforming structure and continue an overage of impervious surface located in Scandia Valley Township on Shamana Lake. Would you come forward, Dan, and state your name for the record?
Dan Amundson?
Thank you. And the staff report, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, again, this is a variance to increase the height of a garage on fill within the setback to the road and side property line, and to continue an overage in impervious surface. The ordinance reference is section 301, 301.6A, 705.6, 706.1B, and then also 706.3. And then here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And then an aerial photograph outlined in blue. And then some oblique imagery of the property. And then here are some photographs taken at the viewing. Again, the property is in section 18 of Scandia Valley Township, and it's on Shamana Lake, which is a general development lake. The lot is part of the Houts Outlot subdivision that was platted in 1949. The property is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 85 feet wide and 15,343 square feet. According to the assessor's records, the 1,248 square foot dwelling was built in 1949, and the 480 square foot garage was built in 1972. There are 2 other storage buildings on site. All buildings are non-conforming for setback from the water or within setback to the road and side property line. The focus of this request is the detached garage. The garage is within the setback to the road and partially within the right-of-way. And then here's an aerial photograph of the map layer with the right-of-way turned on. This area has known issues due to the flooding of Lake Shamana and the flat topography. The township road floods seasonally, and in recent years, the water is sustained on the road for longer periods of time. And then here's some oblique imagery of the property over the years. And then here is the topographic contours for the area. The applicant is requesting a variance to elevate the existing non-conforming garage on fill, along with the driveway approximately 15 inches to direct water towards the road and away from the structure. The applicant also plans to repave the driveway. The existing and proposed impervious surface is 28.22%. 25% impervious is allowed, so a variance is requested to maintain the impervious surface as is. Then here's the impervious surface calculation. And then the township has provided a letter of approval for the elevation work, and that was in your packet, but it's here as well. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreline development, goal D1. And the water plan goal and objectives is surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 107 notices were sent. 1 email in support of the request was received prior to the public hearing. I believe it is from the neighbor. Let me just grab that here. So this is from Patrick Doyle. I'm writing on behalf of Daniel Amundson's application for variance. I am Dan's neighbor, and I have no objection to Dan's request. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. And then there are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Could you clarify a couple things before we
Yes.
proceed?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure which picture, I think his drawing might be helpful for us to look at.
Okay, I'll go back
To
to
meet
that,
the
Mr. Chair.
setback from the road right-of-way, how far back would he have to move?
He would have to be 30 feet.
Okay, and he's within the right-of-way now.
That's correct. So let me get, I'm going to get this aerial photo. So he'd need to be 30 feet from this line,
This line.
that blue line. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm,
That
yeah, this blue line. Since this is a platted road, this is a property line, and so he'd need to be 30 feet from that.
Okay, and he'd need to be 10 feet from the neighbor's,
Correct.
Side
10
yard?
feet from the side property line, yes.
okay. Okay, thank you. All right, your chance to respond to the staff report or add anything, or?
Well, the footprint is there. The garage is existing, the driveway's existing. Like I say, I don't want to move it, I just want to pick it up. So therefore, and measuring, from the township center of the road, I have plenty of room, but the setback is what the issue is. And so, like I say, the driveway is damaged due to the high water floods, moisture. Garage has been in water, starting to deteriorate and around the bottom, torqued due to the ice. It has lifted, so there's gaps under the the garage and the slab already. So basically, it's to fix everything and avoid 3 times this year already and 3 times last year and so many times the year before. Getting tired of the water situation, so I just want to get stuff up so the lawnmower, whatever's on the floor of the garage isn't flooded all the time.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, and one more clarification, Amy. Because the garage is a non-conforming structure, just raising it up is part of the variance request,
That's
correct?
correct.
If it was a conforming structure, it wouldn't need that, probably.
We would have, well, the impervious surface, though, would have needed to have been addressed. So we've got a few things going on. We have nonconformity for setback from the road, from the side property line, and then also the overage and impervious surface. So those three things together is what's driving the need for the ask for the variance tonight.
Okay, everybody on the board in understanding that?
Just, Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Brett.
just for clarification, I'm just trying to get my hands around this. Expand a non-conforming structure. Is it an expansion of that garage or?
In height. So the overall height from natural grade to peak will change, even though he's not adding volume to the building. It's going up in height from natural grade. So we're calling it an expansion of a non-conforming structure for those reasons.
So it'll go up 15 inches?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And that's whether it would be on block or elevated on fill. Because we take that measurement from natural grade, so any change in that to a nonconformity,
What is the I mean, I was there today and viewed that on my way here, but what is the height of that peak on that garage?
It's the 8-foot garage door, so another 4 foot. So
Yeah, I don't think that's
15,
the question,
yeah.
though, Brent. The question is that
From
the
natural
garage is
grade.
going to be raised from here to here. And if it was conforming, meeting the side yard setbacks and the right-of-way setback, that wouldn't be an issue. But since it's non-conforming, raising its elevation requires a variance.
Because we take our measurements from ground to peak, natural grade. So he's
Okay, so I was just
manipulating
trying to get
grade.
my hands around this
Yeah.
expanding a non-conforming. It's not gonna expand
The
the
building itself.
footprint.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm clear on that. Mr. Chair, I still had a couple questions
Go
for the
ahead,
applicant
yes.
here. I'm curious, Dan, where the 15 inches comes from, one, and then part two of that, you're in lowland there, which is always gonna have water. Are you looking at putting footings in or having a floating slab? What is there now and what are you thinking about?
15 inches was just kind of a, well, I'm trying to think of one of those pictures showed, there's a portion of little bit of a retaining wall. And was 15 inches, so I figured I'd just go with the ground level at that point. That's where the 15 inches came from. I could have said 12 inches and, nope, it's just off to the right of that picture.
Yeah, I don't have a picture that
yeah.
shows the
I got one on
retaining wall.
on my phone, if you want to see that, but,
Mr. Chair, I believe, do you all recall what he's talking about when he pointed out the retaining wall where the yard stops and the driveway starts?
towards the septic tank side.
Mr. Chair,
Before you for the record, I'd like to have the record show that we were there on the 9th, viewing the property, 4 of us, and then Brent, you said you were there.
Today,
Okay, and is the same thing true with the previous property?
correct.
Okay, and, yeah, could you add that to the minutes, please? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to help answer Brent's question. If you look, Brent, like between the garage and that pickup and see the grass, that 15 inches, there's like, it don't show it there, but behind that pickup, he has a little retaining wall, and that lines up with his lawn. So by raising it 15 inches, it's going to tie in with the slope of the lawn and be the same elevation as that.
And just on the left side of this photo here, Dan, your neighbor, is that to the northeast?
That'd be
This grass
more
strip? No,
to the southwest, or to the west.
the grass is to the southwest?
Yeah.
I mean, that is, we're in the dry part of the year now, and that's soggy there.
Yes,
And raising this up the 15 inches, concerned about, the water's got to go somewhere. Where's it going to go? If you raise yours up, is this gentleman over here in D house going to be affected by that?
I was planning on still having a kind of a valley. As it is now, it drains towards the road. And then when it gets down to the mailboxes on the road's edge, that's where it quite often accumulates. One of those aerial photos showed it. But anyways, I still was planning on having call it a valley, and the water would still drain towards the road downhill, away from
Okay.
the neighbor's house, my house type thing.
Okay. Before we go any further, you need to address impervious surface. I haven't asked you yet if you've come up with a plan for that. But also, by raising your garage 15 inches, you create real problems for your neighbor, especially if you don't meet the side yard setback. If you meet that side yard setback, you move over to the 10-foot setback, you're improving your impervious surface calculation. The way I calculated it, it was about 1% per foot that you move over. You move over 6 feet, you go down 6%, and all of the waterway work would be on your property and not on his. And I think that is, you saw a little conflict in the last application with a neighbor that's over the side yard. You know, it's not even meeting the setback, but he's even over the property line. Those things create issues in the future. This is your chance to meet that, at least meet that setback, and to reduce your impervious surface. Have you thought about that?
I have. If I have to, I can narrow it up, move one way a foot each way. So subtract a foot this side, subtract a foot that side. If that would help the cause.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dave.
You know, I don't always agree with you, but I agree with you on this one. I did some math here. It's the reason my cell phone was out. But, you know, you talked about that 1%, and it just seems if you're gonna come up 15 inches and then you're gonna slope it, you're gonna end up right at the same level at the end of the driveway where it meets the road. You know, it is that, I think that again, handling that water to the side of that garage between you and the other property, there isn't room to do that. It just doesn't seem like even, I think that moving it over, reducing the impervious surface is, and then it'd allow you to handle the water a little better. And I know we all have to give up things. I mean, I'm
Well,
sorry.
like I said, if I'll concede a foot on that side and a foot on that
I
side.
think you'll have to go more than a foot.
Really?
I guess I'd like to proceed with our conversation here, assuming that, you know, I would propose a condition that he meets the side yard variance and that he meets the impervious surface, because he has lots of opportunity to meet impervious surface with this project, either just in this project or this project and removing a storage building, which he indicated at the viewing that he would be willing to do.
Yeah.
So I would I would propose that we move forward with meet the side yard setback, meet the impervious surface calculation. Discussion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I'd be curious to know what that movement would be to meet the side yard setback. Does somebody have the answer to that?
Well, it would be 6 feet, correct? And how much impervious surface would it actually remove?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So if we look at the picture on your monitor,
Correct.
so are you saying if this moved over 6 feet,
Correct.
then the area opened up here then would be returned to pervious? And that's where you're seeing, and that's where that reduction would come? Is that,
Yes.
am I following that? I just wanted to make sure I'm
not
following
exactly
that.
how much of a reduction that is, but if it
Okay.
is,
So let me, I can do some quick math. Let me just get to,
well, Amy's
Yeah.
doing the math. Is there any other comments on that? Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, you know, is that, I think you've really got you could end up with something that really looks nice too. As far as I mean, you could, and not only, you know, you're sure you're gonna give up a little parking space, but you'd have something that would really improve the property, by moving it over and having a kind of a wetland with the, work with the wetland specialist, some kind of water plants in there, something, you could really improve the property.
I guess,
ahead.
as far as that end of it goes, if I can, it's always, we haven't had this issue or this high water problem on Chaminade until 5 years ago or whatever it's really been. It's been coming up, but the last number of years has really been coming bad. And if the lake was to ever go down, I probably wouldn't be sitting here tonight. But, I mean, I guess I don't feel that area is a wetland. I mean, if I see cattails like across the street or something like that, to me, that's more of a wetland. This here, between me and the neighbor that sent in the support, we both cut the grass through there. And, of course, for him backing out, if brush or shrubs or whatever you want to call it are there, of course, it's for both of us, peek out over backing out, it's obstructed view for the road, and you really can't see. And I hate to say it, but people, it's supposed to be 30-mile-an-hour road. They don't do that. I mean, and there's a lot of people walking to, fast vehicles that go by. A lot of vehicles due to not only this resort, but just locals. So, my objection as far as allowing things to grow, shrubs, I mean, a shrub or two is one thing, but when you're saying water plants, in my mind, it comes out as cattails, taller stuff, 5 feet tall, and I don't want that. I know the neighbor doesn't want that, but that's,
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you
Chair?
for your input on that. Go ahead, Amy.
We're spending a lot of time redesigning this project with the applicant saying, nope, 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 nope.
Right.
So it might be fair just to ask the applicant what he is willing to do, and then whether that is something that you would want to consider and keep in mind as conditions, or if you would just consider his request as is, based on what the applicant is willing and not willing to do.
Very good. Yeah, otherwise we could be
right, yeah.
splitting hairs all night long.
Sure.
So your proposal, does it stand as it is on paper?
I can, now if I can concede, and I would allow subtract a foot on each side, narrow up the driveway, move the garage over a foot or foot and a half or whatever. I'll concede that much of it.
Yep.
But I don't really want to go the full 6 feet like was just asked about.
Okay. And,
And then
Go
the
ahead.
second question along with that, if it was 6 foot, how much does that shrink the impervious surfaces?
I'm calculating that
okay.
right now.
you're proposing 3 feet by 50 feet?
Yeah.
Or is it more than 50? It's
Well,
somewhere
I
there.
think
this is- Yeah, I'm gonna show you what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking a 6-foot movement and then going down to here, because this is
Okay.
the area, so I'm coming up with about 285 square feet is what that would do, and now I'm gonna back that off of the impervious surface calc. Divided by. That gets us to about 26.5%.
That's 6 feet, though.
That's moving it over 6 feet from where it is now, and then the length, the gap.
But Daniel's not proposing that.
Correct, but I'm answering the chair's question. He had
Okay,
wanted to know
okay.
what a 6-foot movement would do. And that's my rough math.
So a 2-foot movement would be a third of that then?
Correct, yep.
So that would put it roughly 27? I'm trying to, my numbers are not going quick enough either, but.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Marv.
So something I wanted to possibly piggyback on conditions, and Dave Brucher brought up something about having a storm water management plan. We talked about, you talked about the road possibly raising, putting more tar on it, and what that could create too. I believe a condition would have to almost be put, or see if you're open to, I believe we have, Land Services offers free of charge a officer coming out there with a stormwater management plan, and it would help with directing that water, and would actually be helping.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Amy.
Quite honestly, I don't think there's room on this property to implement a stormwater management plan. There is no pervious area right now for catchment or holding of water on the property, because that garage is only a couple of feet from the side property line. And when you calculate the amount of storage that would need to happen, I don't know that it could be achieved. Also, the applicant has indicated he's not interested. And so that's another thing that I think you'll need to be aware of. If he's not willing to implement it, maintain it, then I'm not sending staff out there to design something.
Okay, because as you probably heard from other board members here, concerned about what it'll do to the neighbor, concerned where that water is going. I think, when and if we would allow this, it would be on our backs, whatever, too. So we're very concerned over this whole issue.
And Mr. Chair, I'm certainly not going to task my staff with coming up with a fix for something that the Board of Adjustment is allowing where it's nearly impossible to do. I don't think that that's a fair, then you're tasking the Land Services Department to fix it rather than the applicant having to come up with a remedy to mitigate the impact of what would be granted.
Thank
Sure.
you, thank you, Marv.
Can I, one more comment on that?
Yes,
Formerly, when it did get water and rain and stuff, it's kind of from, if you know the layout there, Augers Resort would be to the right on that picture, and it goes downhill to the left. And lately, in the last 3 years, when the neighbor 4 or 5 down from me purchased those properties, they brought in all that fill. Now that's kind of acting like a dam for that water to flow that direction and naturally drain into the lake. So therefore, it's a holding dam, so the Wakemans, which is 2 down from me, their garage is been in water for 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. It's always been high, but it's always been able to flow. Now that the water's been blocked, it really can't get out of there, and so that just kind of works it backing up our way too. So
thank you
once I can, in the spring, of course, once the water gets so high, then it, between by my mailbox there, then the water goes out along the edge of the road and the neighbor's driveway, and then it starts flowing south towards the Wakeman driveway, and that's where it starts accumulating until it gets full, then it's across the road. So like I say, we got kind of a catch-22. If we can get the lake lower, we won't have this problem, and the ground won't be saturated, because now, also on the road, on my property, the neighbors and all there, we said how saturated the ground is. It's no place for it to go now anyways, until the ground table water levels go down.
yep, and 2 wrongs don't make a right. What your neighbor did, we don't want you to do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
by improving your impervious surface, what little bit it is, it helps. If everybody does a little bit, it helps. If everybody tries to be conforming, the ordinance is designed to address surface water, groundwater, impervious surface, and the shore impact zone, to maintain those in the best shape that is possible for the property, not for the landowner, but for the property and for future owners
Okay.
and for current people who enjoy the natural resources of the county. So, okay, I'm not sure where we're at anymore. You then are willing to shrink 1.5 feet on each side?
Yeah.
Not move it any further from the road?
No.
Okay,
just-
are you considering removing any other impervious surface from the property?
I can do that one shed there, yes, if so be.
Okay,
If I can do that.
and that's,
I debated after you guys were out. I said, that shed is kind of a eyesore a little bit, and I can probably combine stuff in there.
so from all of your proposals, just a little calculation here, you'd still be under 1% reduction in impervious surface.
So, Mr. Chair, so we're looking at moving the garage over 1 foot? Is that,
A foot to, yeah, okay, we'll
Okay.
say 1 foot on the one, can we go 1.5 feet?
1.5 feet to the east? Is
Yes,
that,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So I'm just writing
Away
this
from,
down.
further from the line.
Okay, so 1.5 feet to east, and then here's your impervious surface calc. Which shed The 20 by 24, 8 by 8, or the 12 by 14?
12 by 14.
The 12 by 14, okay. And 12 by 14 shed, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you quick calculate how much that would improve it? Okay. All right, that's your proposal.
Yes.
Very good. Are we ready? Do you have any other questions?
I got
Public input?
questions,
Go ahead.
but we gotta, I'm waiting for Amy to get that done, cause I gotta ask her.
Okay. Should I ask for public input in the meantime?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. We have to do this. Is there any public input on this application? Any public input on this application? Any input at all? There's nobody out there and no input, so that's a good thing. So we'll close this portion of the meeting to public input.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go
I
ahead,
don't
Mark.
remember hearing, and Amy may have read a letter of support or against from the neighbor. Okay,
Yes, I did, and that was the neighbor
Okay.
to the west.
thank you.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm not fully listening.
Okay, so we've got. Okay. So the total square footage that would be removed would be 196 square feet, and that is moving the garage over and removing the 12 by 14 shed. And so that would result in the impervious surface calculation would be 26.9%.
And it's presently at 20,
28.22.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Amy, when the commissioners invoked that emergency, where you could raise a dwelling on Chaminade, okay, when that was, how did that work when it was just a dwelling? If it was nonconformity or any of that stuff, was that looked at, or that just automatic they could raise their dwelling, or how was that?
They were able to, there was lots of things that went with it, but if you were elevating on fill, it only applied to the principal structure, so it would have been just the cabin.
Yep.
They had to come in with an engineered stormwater plan
Okay.
because they had to show they were not going to impact their, or negatively impact their neighbors by where that water was moving. And we accomplished that through administratively without the need for a variance.
Okay.
So, yes, there were several ways they could elevate, but one of them was on fill,
Okay.
but it had to come in with a plan.
So, just something for everybody to think about. This whole area where the garage is and that concrete is 39 by 51. It's like 1,900 and some square feet, so I put 2,000 square feet. Every inch of rain on that 2,000 square feet is 1,246 gallons, okay? So when you get an inch of rain, it's 1,246 gallons, whether it's the way it is or it's raised, okay? Now, I'm all about lowering impervious surface too, but another thing to think about in this area, and I know you guys are gonna argue with me about this, where's the water gonna go if there was zero impervious surface on this property? It's gonna go down so far. We got a flooding lake. We got flooding on the other side of the road. If there's zero impervious surface, the water's still there. Just something to think about. You know, and I'm all about lowering the impervious surface and doing all that. But I don't think with putting fill in, raising this thing, he's gonna flood his neighbor out. Yes. By moving over a little bit, maintaining your, I call it a swale or a waterway that's coming through there, the water is gonna go the same place it always did. It's gonna be the same amount of water. It's just gonna travel a little bit faster. Yes, a little bit more will dump into that drainage area, but if you moved over a little bit, you maintain that, I don't see where that's a huge problem. Just some points that I was thinking of, and it might spark something, but.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Any other input? Go ahead, Marv.
Mr. Chair, I understand where Clint's coming from, and I want him and you to understand, and I think majority of us do, with the impervious surface, you're not having an opportunity to filter some of this water. You're gonna have vehicles and you're gonna have whatever, have some contamination, and rather than run right off to that holding pond or whatever, it has an opportunity to be filtered in by the earth. Otherwise, yeah, he made some very good points.
Thank you, Marv. Are we ready to review the questions? Okay, let's do that then. Mr. Brent, on the first question, is the request in harmony with the general purpose intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
Well, this structure having been built some 50-plus years ago, if my math is right, 70 years maybe. No, 72. So roughly 50 years. A lot of things have changed, and being in harmony with the purposes and the intent, I think this cuts both ways. One, he wants some relief from the strictest interpretation, and the ordinance and comprehensive plan allows for that. But on the other hand, it's not conforming. It's not a conforming lot. It's not conforming to the setback on the sideline. Raising it up also pushes might get you high and dry, but it's also going to push that problem elsewhere. And there's some concern about that. And the purpose of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan does include water runoff, water quality, and all of that. So this one cuts both ways.
Okay. Anybody else like to add to number one? Go ahead, Dave.
This whole Lake Chaminade thing is very emotional deal with the water coming up. And I understand, it's your property, and I understand the emotion involved in that. I mean, I'm just trying to, I was really thinking about how this might work, so that we try to improve things without stepping on your toes too hard here. So I hope you understand that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
I
Marv.
want to add a few things, and Brent and Dave made some very valid points. And his willingness to lower the impervious surface down to 26.9% helps with this here. I like compromise, and as Brent had pointed out, this cuts both ways. Raising it up 15 inches is not ridiculous, and as some of the others, what we've allowed in the past. So with that being said, it is in somewhat harmony, let's call it. Not total, but in willingness to work with the neighbor. As Brent said, it cuts both ways, but your willingness to work with us matters.
Okay, thank you, Marv. And my thoughts are generally more towards the ordinance and the intent of the ordinance, intent of the comprehensive plan to protect natural resource, to protect water, both surface and groundwater, to protect your neighbors, to respect the setbacks. You're proposing to do something very major here. Lift up this garage, cut it off from its posts. You have every opportunity right now to be more conforming. You've given a 1.5 feet. You've given this up the one small shed as a improvement to impervious surface. Clint's point is good, you know, it's still gonna, you know, whatever you put down there, is whatever impervious surface you has, it's gonna run off. It's gonna go somewhere. It's going, you know, and this 1,200 gallons, if it was cut to 600 gallons, there'd only be 600 gallons going somewhere else. It's incremental, you know, how we do things. And you have, what were there, 99? No, 107 notices sent out. That means there's 107 people that are aware of your request, and most of them probably don't know where you live or never will drive by your place, but quite a few will. What did they do there? You know, what did they allow there? Oh, well, that was,
Chairman? Few people have walked by and
Okay.
said, "What, we got the letter, what are you doing?"
okay, you'll have to be recognized in order
Oh,
to
sorry.
speak.
Sorry.
It's our turn now.
Okay.
So I think this would, even with the small amount that you've given, I think that this would be setting a precedence that is not good, and it would be, it really is not meeting it is not in harmony with the intent of ordinance. So, anybody else on number one? Number two, is the applicant preparing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by land use ordinance? I guess I get the first crack at this one. Elevating the structure and keeping present setbacks is not proposing to use it in a reasonable manner. It's not reasonable to go to all this cost and all this expense. And I disagree with the 15 inches. 15 inches down to the roadway is quite a ramp. It's going to be a very noticeable ramp as to passersby. Again, that's maybe more a essential character question, but it's also going to be a question of, wow, that seemed unreasonable, but they allowed it. And I think this, again, is an unreasonable request. Not the fact that you want to get out of water, that's very reasonable, but the way you're proposing to go about it. Okay, anybody else on question number two? Go ahead, Clint.
I think it's really reasonable. The other alternative to this is jackhammer all the cement out. He could re-pour that cement, leave it exactly the way it is, nothing would change. Okay? He's given a little bit. Raising it 15 inches, I don't think is near as big a deal as others think. And you gotta remember, 24 feet of the 51 foot is still flat. Yes, it'll be a ramp coming down. But I don't know. I just think it's a real small ask. You know, when somebody comes in, he could just jackhammer it all out, leave it where it is, re-pour all the cement the way it is. Nothing's gonna change. Here, we're gonna get rid of a shed that's on lakeside. This project's non-lakeside. We have a flooding issue there, that whole area. I'll tell you what, I had flooding at my house this year. It never got any of my buildings because I started out from the get-go building things up where they should be built. I would be doing the same thing this gentleman would be trying to do, and I'd be a little more, not quite as patient, I guess, is what this man is. But I think it's very reasonable. He's only asking to raise that up 15 inches, 1,900 and some square feet. It ain't gonna change much other than directing water a little quicker. It ain't adding no more water. Yes, it's putting maybe a little more towards the neighbors. He's moving over. It's still gonna run the same way. It might get there just a tick faster. So I do think it's very reasonable.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead, Marv.
Mr. Chair, one thing to point out, over 100 letters were sent, as was discussed earlier, and no negative remarks. And one letter of support, and the letter of support was what his neighbor directly next to him, willing to work with him. Yeah, I mean, this whole Shamina deal is kind of sensitive, but as if you looked at that slope, that concrete, it actually looked like it was sloping inward and to basically hold water in there. So something has to be done. And I think we all know he'll start out with 15 inches, and we know concrete settles. It'll probably, after a couple of years, drop 2 inches. And if you thought about that. Yeah, so you're better off being a little bit higher than try to do something later on. So I don't think he's asking for too much here. And his willingness to compromise and drop it down to 26.9% and impervious surface, every little bit helps.
Okay, anybody else on question number 2? Okay, we'll proceed to number 3. Will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes, just looking here, if you look in the road right away, down that whole West Shamina Drive, I count 4 other garages that are in the road right away. Some are a lot farther in the road right away than he is. And if you look down the Lake Combs where they're positioned, they're all about the same distance from the lake. It looks like a lot of nonconformities, not saying that's right, but it's going to maintain the essential character by what else is in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, anybody else? Yeah, my thoughts are that a structure like this raised within the right-of-way and within the neighbor's setback is sending the wrong message. And that steep sloping driveway also will look out of place. I'm thinking this project could be made better and with just a little more give from the applicant. That's my opinion. Anybody else on number 3? Okay, then on to number 4, and we'll start with Dave. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property?
I'd say yes, it is. You know, I'm listening to the other fellow board members here and some of the points you made too, Clint, that, you know, this Lake Shamina deal, this is a problem here, a big problem. And, you know, I understand that there's no permits been allowed, been all kinds of proposals come up. There's no permits been allowed for any pumping yet, I guess.
As far as yeah,
Yeah, I mean, nothing, it doesn't look like anything's gonna happen.
Right.
Is what it looks like. And, I heard that from Bowser, but anyway, though, no, this is a practical difficulty unique to the circumstances of the property and all the property around Lake Shamina. You know, we've got a problem there, and when it's going to stop, who knows when we got a basin lake. And so, yes, it is. It's practical difficulties due to circumstances unique to every piece of property around Lake Shamina.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that?
All I would add,
Mark?
Mr. Chair, would be, is the high water levels, which I assumed that Dave was elating to, but the high water levels creating the practical difficulty all the way around, so.
Okay. I guess I'd like to add to that I agree with the raising of the structure. There is a practical difficulty there with water. And it's unique to the property being in that Shamina area. And in particular on Shamina Road there, or Shamina Drive. But there are no real practical difficulties on the neighbor's side yard. That could be met easily. The setback from the road right-of-way could be improved on, minor detail, but it could be. So practical difficulty for the portion of the a variance that affects the raising of the garage, but not on the side yard setback for sure, and not on impervious surface either, because he has a great opportunity here to replace concrete with grass, with pervious surface, and get down to 25%. Okay, anybody else on number 4? Okay, number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marvin?
Well, the need for the variance was created by the high water levels was pointed out, and it's created issues all the way around it. So it's other than the landowner or prior landowners. As was pointed out, if it wasn't for the high water, nothing would have happened here. It wouldn't have created the issues where we're at.
Okay, anybody else? I'd agree with Marv on the one issue on the raising of the garage, but not on the side yard. That the only action there is your preference to put it in, keep it in its present place. And, or the previous landowner when he placed it too close to the neighbor's side yard. And impervious surface, again, is, there's nothing other than your actions. You have half of a property, half of a conforming property, you can only have half as much stuff to be conforming as far as impervious surface goes. There's too much on too small of a property, and again, that's a personal preference and your decision, not actions by anybody else than you or previous landowners. Okay, anybody else on number 5? Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than economic consideration? Brent?
I think it does. I mean, we're looking at the topography of this lot, the elevation, the fill, the repair of structure and driveway that's there. We have to consider that lot, the shape of the lot, how it was formed, the sewer location, the well. There's a lot of different things regarding the water issue as the practical difficulty here to consider, not just economic considerations.
Anybody care to add to number 6? If not, you ready to vote on these questions? Okay. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinances and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
I'm going to say no.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
And Marv?
Yes.
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? My answer is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
No.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself, no. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Starting with Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Okay, and question number 1 was answered no,
Correct.
and the rest were answered yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, all questions have to be answered to the affirmative. I move that we deny this variance request. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, a motion has made and seconded to deny this request. Is there any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. We'll proceed to vote with a roll call vote. Yes in favor of the motion, no opposed to the motion. Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint, sorry.
Nay.
Dave
Yes.
and Marv.
Nay.
Okay, by my count, motion carries 3-2.
Correct.
Okay, your request for variance has been denied. You can talk with Land Services about a next step, or thanks for all your patience and the information you provided us.
Okay.
Okay, minutes. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, minutes accepted. Any new business, old business?
I don't have either, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Make that motion?
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
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 Meeting adjourns at 7:26.